forgot to share my screen. Sorry, guys. Okay, so we're away now. Okay, so welcome to lesson 7. Okay, so today what we're going to be doing is learning a little bit more about how to format cells, but more importantly, we're also going to teach you a few skills about how to identify when how to do things when you don't know what the code is. Okay, so we're going to use a really common example. So which is we're going to create a set of, just like we have in the last couple of lessons, a random number generator that's producing a series of codes, a series of values between 0 and 100. So you should have this macro set up on your on your VBA editor. Now, once you have that, so it generates random numbers. And so what we want to do is we want to be able to highlight, if we assume that they're grades of someone's test, we want to be able to highlight the good results and the poor results. And to do that, what we want to do is we want to get the code to step through the each cell. So one at a time, 1, 2, 3, evaluate the number versus the criteria and turn the cell a different color. So to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a second loop. Okay, and within that loop, so always just I'm going to create a select case. I'm going to use select case rather than an if statement because I'm going to have 4 different options, 4 different colors that I want to turn. Okay, and then we'll have create our case. So we might have case. Firstly, if the cell is less than 40, so we've got a mark less than 40, we want to turn it a certain color. And then if we do less than 60, and then if we do less than 80, and the last one would be greater than 80, so they get a really good result. Okay, and we're going to end select. Okay, so what we have is our basic selection guide going. Okay, so where we're basically evaluating the values of each one of these cells as it moves through the loop to create the to evaluate its value and then change color. Now, the problem that I have at this stage is that, and you'll see this happen to you a lot with formatting, is that I don't know the precise code that I actually need to turn the cell red, green, yellow, or blue, or whatever color is it that I choose. And you're never going to remember these things. So there's got to be a way to acquire it relatively easily. So we're going to show you how to do that. Now, this technique is also really useful if there's anything else you don't know how to do, because and we'll show you in a second, we can get the use Excel itself to produce code which is similar to what we want, and then we can modify it. Okay, so to do this, I'm going to have to turn off my VBA editor. Okay, so when you're doing this activity, you need to actually turn the VBA editor off. And the reason for that is what we're going to do is we're going to record a macro. Now, recording macros can be done in 2 places on Excel. So the first one is here, okay, in the View tab. So anyone that doesn't have the Developer tab can still access that, or you can actually do it on the Developer tab. Okay, so what we're going to do is record a macro. Now, what it normally does is it gives it a name, and you can change the name. I'm not going to bother in this case. And it asks you for a hotkey. So what a hotkey is, that the other way to initiate a macro is to have a hotkey, and usually I put Control Shift something. And the reason I do that is give me Control Shift for some reason. Doesn't really matter. Is because then if you put something like Control C, there's already a defined command for it if you want to use the macro in that way. Okay, so once I've done that, as soon as I click that, it is recording my actions. Okay, so I'm going to do a couple of actions beforehand just so you can see the kind of code that it's likely to produce. Okay, so let's say, for example, I'll do a couple of different things. So let's say I select the cell, and I'm just going to put some gobbledygook in. Okay, and we'll just see what the code does. And let's say I'm going to copy that down. Okay. All right, so it's done all that. And then I'm going to select the whole, and we're going to use this later. And I'm going to delete everything that's in this sheet. Okay, and then the last thing I'm going to do, and you'll see what the code all looks like, is get the thing, get the code for the colors. So I'm going to want a red, a orange, a yellow, and a green. So we're going to use that formatting to actually produce our code. Okay, so once you've done that and you've got all the things that you want, then what we can do is we can just go back, I think it's, and we can click stop recording. And so we're back in normal mode. Okay. So now what we'll do is we'll have a look at what is going, what sort of code it produced by going back into the Visual Basic editor. Okay, and we'll just have a chat about the kind of code that it is producing, just to show you the kind of thing that it will do. Okay, so you might remember what I just did is I selected on range F1 of this particular cell, and then I entered all of these three cells. So I did it on 3 different cells, and then I decided to copy the cell down. Okay, from I1 to I11, and then I altered the column width. So if I wanted to know how to alter column width, well, that will tell you how. Okay, and then I also selected the whole sheet and deleted everything, which is the code here. So it's saying cells, select cells. So I've selected the whole sheet, and then we went on and we've got the code for each one of the colors here below. Now, with these sort of things, what you want to do is that often this will give you information of approximately how to give you the code that you want, and then you need to fill in the gaps. So we're going to start by, I'm going to put the code into my, so this one was for the red. Fix up the code in a second, and we'll just put all the code in the right place. And then the second color was the yellow, orange it was. Okay, so we'll take the code there, and we will paste it in. And then we've got our last one here. Okay, so we've got all of our code here for all the different colors. So the next step, what I always do as we're working down, is I'm always going to tidy up my code, because you can see it's kind of looking pretty messy and it's a little bit harder to read. Okay, so but let's have a look. Let's have a look at what this code is actually saying to us. Let's have a look at this code right now. So this is, and these will all be the same. So what you're seeing is this bit of code is saying range A1, which was over here. Whoops, so daisy. Didn't mean that for that to disappear. We'll fix that so we can see both. Okay, range A1. Okay, and it's turned it red. So you'll see that it has it selects that information by, which basically means you clicked on the cell. Okay, and then it says with that selection dot interior, and then it has all of these other sort of parameters associated with it. And the one that I'm assuming is the color is the number here. Okay, so the way that the coding works is that each one of the colors has a number associated with it. And so if you wanted pink, I have no idea what the number for pink is, but what I can do is I can work it out by using this method. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to convert this block of code to make sure that it's dynamic and fits in with the loop that's happening. So what we want is that as the loop moves through the 10 cells, we want to make sure that once it fulfills the criteria, so in this case less than 40, so we 38, let's say, as we move down, it reaches this point and it says, right, in cell 5, it has a value less than 40. We want to turn it red. Okay, so what we want is we want to use this same bit of code here where the row number is changing as you go down each cell. Okay, so we can just take that code, and I could do it a couple of ways. I could put the code in here to replace it, and that would probably work. But you can see that it's a little bit inefficient. And whenever you're thinking about your coding, I would tend to do it this way instead. Okay. And so now what you've got is you've got a cell reference and all this information, which is to code it red, all there ready to go. The only thing I'm going to do is tidy up my code. Okay. Okay, so that's all looking good, and I can also, if I want to, I could also document the code and say turns cell caps locked on. Okay, so if I wanted to do that, I won't document all of them each time. Okay, so I've still got so I can do exactly the same thing with the other cells, just repeating the exercise. Oops, we want to get rid of that. Okay. Okay, next one. We want to do the same thing again. Okay, and then we'll do the last one. Okay, down here, and then we're nearly ready to test our code. And that's neat. Okay. Okay, so we're all ready to go. We can test our code, and as I said, I would advise when you're inexperienced to be putting in those notes. Okay. Alrighty. So what we're going to do now? Push our code. Let's see what happens. Oops. Oh, that's yep. Okay, so let's see. Is it working as expected? Well, we haven't got any numbers above 80 in that particular. There we go. And it is doing what we're expecting to do. So that's fantastic. Okay. Now, one of the things I did encounter when I just want to highlight here is, and I did this last time I actually was saving it. So sometimes when you're pasting code from one place to another, you might end up missing a line. So for example, I've taken the line of end width out of here. And so what will happen is if I push play, I'll get an error. And so what's happening is that if we have a look at the compile error, it's telling us that end select without case select. Okay, so it's basically telling you that it can't find the end of this code, even though that's not what's actually changed. Okay, so what's actually changed is it's got some, some basic parameters, but we haven't told it to look for to end it. So sometimes with these sort of things, what you might have to do is use the debugger to go through and find the error. So if we run, I'm going to use the debugger. So okay, and it won't even let you go that far. Okay, that's probably not a great example, but that's okay. Okay, so we've got our piece of code that does what we want. Okay, so the next step is each time we test our code, let's just say, for an example, that I want to do 100. Okay, and actually before I do that, I'm going to give you a little task to do. Now, this bit of code that I've written is a little bit inefficient because it does 2 loops. See if you can work out a way to reduce the code to having only 1 loop, just to make it a little bit efficient. So we can actually take this loop and combine it with this loop to produce something that just that simplifies the code a little bit. Okay, so have an attempt at that now, and then restart the video in a second. All right, so hopefully you've had a go at it, and the way to do it is that we can actually get the number randomly generated first each time it goes through the loop. Okay, so we can take that same piece of code, each time it goes through the loop, it generates that random number and then does all the evaluation. So you don't actually need that first loop. Okay, so as a general thing, what coders like to do is to reduce the number of times they have to do the loop when they're doing something like this, and do as much stuff as they can in the loop to maximize the efficiency of the code. Now, the next example I just want to show you is that if we then, I've just changed the code to 100, so it's now doing 100 lines of that code rather than 10. So let's say for whatever reason that we sometimes want to do 100 and we sometimes want to do 10. Okay. Now if we have a look at what happens to the code, okay, so this is, and the easiest way to show this is to, I've taken a copy of the 2 cells side by side, and now I rerun the code. And so you can see the code's been rerun here, okay, but all the information that was from the previous run, the last time the macro run, is still there. Okay, so what we want to do is we actually probably want to clear the cells so that whenever that number changes, that we reset the worksheet. Okay. Now, to get the code, I've already got the code because I did it before. I can record a macro to check that out. Okay, so if I do that, I can see that you might remember that we selected the whole cell, the whole sheet, and we deleted everything on it. So I can do that. So I'm going to give that a whirl. Okay, so I can take that code. So I'm using exactly the same process as what I did before, except now before we run the macro, we want to clear the sheet, clear everything off it. Okay, now we just need to maybe make the codes a little bit more efficient. So it's just telling you it's going to delete the cell. So I'm guessing, because we're trying to delete the entire worksheet, that I'm guessing that what we want to do, hopefully this works, is we just want to probably just hit delete. So have select cells. Hopefully this works, never know. And we'll give it a whirl. Like that, see if it works. Okay, so let's try. Yep, clears the cells, fantastic. Okay, now, so basically I've just taken the code exactly the same way and I've kind of worked out how to clear the entire thing. Now, the other method that we're going to show before we let you go to be able to do the task for today is to show you another way to get code when you don't know how to do something. So there'll be some things that this recording macro method will not work for, where you need to actually get some coding. So for example, if you want to find a piece of code that tells you what the last line of data is in your data set, for whatever reason, you can't do that by recording macros. So the other method you can use is simply to search on the internet. So there's a couple of good forums out there that you can search for code. And I've just got an example here just to show you, just to finish off. So if we have a look here, I have put in clearing the formats of cells in VBA. And I've just searched Google, okay? And I'm going to go for this one, okay? And there's your code, okay? So you can also do that. And there are also forums. There's one very good forum called Mr. Excel I used to use a lot, so I can go into that for a second. And there are literally people that sit around waiting for people to ask them questions, and they answer on forums. Okay, so you can go into Excel questions. So I'll just put in Mr. Excel, and then I can actually search questions. So if I want to do clear cells, okay, I can do a search. Hopefully it does it for me. I don't think I need to be a member. But anyway, this is the one I used to use a lot. Okay, and then you can search these sections to find code on how to do it. Okay, so there's a couple of methods you can do. All right, so for the task for you guys to do today is there are a couple of things that I'm going to get you guys to do. So the first thing is have a play with the different numbers and produce different colors. Okay, so if you've got that example up on your screen, what happens if I change the code for the numbers? What happens to the colors? Rerun the code, have a bit of a look. Okay, always have a bit of a play with the code whenever you're learning something new. Okay, and your task for today is that you're going to create a macro that randomly generates grades for 100 students and evaluates the letter of the grade that they got and formats the cell to highlight the different grades. Now, what I would like you to do is, rather than use colors, because you've just seen me use colors, why don't you try either bold or underline or changing the color of the text instead? Okay, all of these things you can use the same method to be able to do it. Okay, good luck with it, and we'll see you in class. Cheers, guys.